Welcome everyone to a special edition of Data Center Revolution. I am a guest co-host of Data Center Revolution, and I like to talk about a few different things. When you see me up here, we're going to talk about industry-related events, certainly, but we're going to talk about things that are near and dear to my heart, which is supporting the veteran community. And today, it'll be about the conversation around mental health, which is not just about the veteran community, and we'll get into that more. But first, let's go through some introductions.
Okay, I'm Dan Lombardo. I'm with Beck Construction. I'm also the founding board member for a charity, One Tribe Foundation 22 Kill. And I'm also advisory board chairman for Brotherhood of Fallen Fort Worth Police Department as well. And I specialize, of course, in electrical and mission critical. And it's pretty much what I've done my career, other than I started off. Why did I like electrical? Is because I joined the Air Force and I decided to thought, electrical would be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So I went into the civil engineering group and specialized in electrical, was a power pro. A lot of the Air Force guys you meet, especially in DCAC event, are power pros. So that's pretty much to wrap it up.
Yeah, well, we'll get in definitely in more depth. My name is Anthony Garcia. I'm the Vice President of Hyperscale at Overwatch Mission Critical. I'm also a co-founder of the organization and very excited for today's conversation. Some of the things that we want to talk about is why we're here. I said briefly, we're going to talk about mental health, but why are we here? And I'll start, but you finish. There's two different communities that we're very focused on. We've always been talking about the veterans suicide rate, the police suicide rate, first responders in general. But there's an area that we never talk about, but you do. The construction industry alone has probably more suicides on a daily rate than the entire veteran and military community combined. But it's just not a statistics we talk about. Every one of our sites right now has someone that's not going to make it through that project. And there's no large community outpour to that community. So if you could tell us a little more about what you do with Beck on supporting mental health.
Yeah, so interesting enough, when I brought to Beck the awareness that you're 5 times more likely to die by suicide in construction than almost any civilian job. I mean, excluding, of course, first responders and military on that sense of it. But what we didn't really have was a program to teach, first of all, is the mental wellness for yourself, and also suicide prevention for the people around you. So interesting right now, more than any other time in the United States, finding help has been the hardest thing to do. I mean, some of the stats that I have on here right now is 17.7 million people are having canceled appointments, or they cannot find an appointment for mental wellness. All right. So what does that tell you? That tells you that we are going to have to take care of it as an organization ourselves to help, to try to educate our people how to deal with the people that work for you or work to the left and right of you. So I went to them and said, can I start my own program? And they said, yes. So we created the ASK program. That's awareness, support, and knowledge. And the 2 keys of that program are very simple, is your own mental wellness, is taking care of yourself first. First of all, like anything else, like you were just talking about being on the airplane, is before you can put that life preserver on someone next to you, you need to put it on yourself first, right? Is make sure you're taken care of before you start supporting other people. Well, that's the mistake we make all the time, is we don't focus enough on ourselves. So through the program that I'm teaching, is we invest time on several things, and we can go in deep in that.
Yeah.
One of them is the resources that not only the organization has, national resources, and then of course a holistic approach, which we can go into deeper as we talk. But that's what I'm doing for Beck. And interesting, they're letting me do not only MEP service, electrical, mechanical, and plumbing for all of our locations, but mission critical. We do mission critical. We do, end of life equipment switch out. And then I do this ASK program, and I teach it. Matter of fact, next Monday I leave for Atlanta to teach it in Atlanta at our Atlanta office, and next will be Denver. So one thing our organization does is they've really invested a lot of funds into focusing on our people's mental wellness.
That's great. If you're watching on video, you should see a slide come up right now. If you could read that quote again, because that's wildly powerful about the amount of construction people that...
I gave some statistics, but one of them was 17.7 million of people that experience delays in canceled appointments or they can't get an appointment for mental wellness. 50% of all lifetime mental illness starts by the age of 14 years old. 75% by the age of 24 years old. And ready for this? Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Wow. And there's a lot more statistics we'll do, but here's the one that I told you guys about construction. And this is from the CDC, so you can look it up that first of all, the crazy stats is between 2000 and 2020, 800,000 people died. 800,000 people died by suicide. And ready for this? 78.7% is men. And interesting, when we go through these stats, and you go through 22 veterans a day died by suicide, and then nearly 80% of all the people who died by suicide are males in that same category. Mm-hmm. Why is that? And it's because we're proud, right? We're afraid that when we ask for help that we don't accept, it's okay not to be okay. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an analogy or process that we do all the time is just say I'm teaching my course, there's 100 people in the room. I'll say, whoever's had anxiety or depression, raise your hand. And only 4 people raise their hand. And the sad statistics about it, there's our stigma. So within...
I'm not raising my hand. Yeah. Like, I'm not telling everyone I got problems.
Well, you don't want the people to left or right of you. You're going to raise your hand. You think, oh, I'm exposed, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem we need to start doing is showing a little bit of vulnerability, right? Is the only way that we can especially help the younger people is we have to say, I've been through those deep, dark things. I've had the demons I've had to wrestle too. And this is how I got through it. Mm-hmm. That's the only way young people are going to be able to raise their hand or say, it's okay not to be okay. So it's been a long process that I've taken through my own. And I think you and I talked about this. I lost Michael Higley in 1991 trying to, attempt to try to save his life, and I internalized it, right? I didn't want to tell anybody that I needed help. And of course, back in 1991, there wasn't as many resources. When I was in the Air Force, they just said, man, what you need to do is just keep yourself busy. Well, that was great till I blocked it out. And then years after I left the military, it came out in the most interesting ways, had the dreams, had just remembering that day, feeling guilty, remembering that his family doesn't have him forever, right? So that's how, the organization, one of the reasons we got started is we started out originally 11 years ago as 22 Kill. We did the 22 push-up challenge. You got this ring. And we just wanted to show awareness. Mm-hmm. Well, man, we started getting The Rock, David Beckham, a lot of stars doing the push-ups and thought, well, what's the next steps? How can we help everybody? Well, it was just actually helping the group around us in our circle. Well, the interesting enough about counseling that found out the hard way is communication is key. And you talked about this, is if your counselor if they don't know military or first responder communication, it's hard then to help them through that journey. So we just realized if we were sending people to counselors that we were partnering with, I'll never forget, I had a Marine call me and he said, hey, my counselor's crying. What should I do?
Whoa.
I'm like, why's your counselor crying? Well, I told her the 6 people I witnessed being killed, and emotionally she couldn't take care of it. So we realized internally,
if I have a problem with it and I tell you and you now fall apart,
how are you going to help me through that journey?
Yeah.
So our counselors are first responders, military, or they were married in the circle. They understand the communication because communication is key. The other thing is, and we just talked about this early, was the misconception of how we view counseling. We view counseling like we do taking medication. We feel I'm going to take these pills and I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to get better. And we talk to a lot, especially first responders, that they come back and say, man, this wasn't working. I said, did you interact? No, they're supposed to make me better. I said, this isn't a magic wand thing where they just hit, it's better. You have to bare your soul. You have to show the vulnerability and take that trip with your counselor together. And yes, it takes, first of all, a good counselor to do it, but it takes you to open up. You cannot solve the problems without baring your soul. The other thing I feel that we have a huge issue in this in the U.S. right now is how we administer mental health medication. We don't really evaluate what is going on mental wellness wise. There's now companies on the internet that the doctor will see you through telehealth, and then you'll get antidepressants. Well, all that's doing is masking the real issue because
Treating symptoms.
it hasn't been diagnosed what you really have. But not taking it on head on is just going to make it worse and make it harder for the individual to function.
Hey, real quick, before we get too far, if you're not watching on video, the links to the statistics that Dan just talked about, they'll be in the description of the podcast or they'll be in the comments of the post. It's very important. This is a statistic we all have to share. Like we're going to keep going on about veteran community and first responders, and it's wildly important. But we have to acknowledge the people that surround us every single day, the laborers, the construction teams all across the country. They're the statistics. So look out for the link if you're not watching on video, and it'll take you there to spread the word. Keep going, man.
Yeah. And so, what this information goes through is not only that, but even different nationalities, different people that, if you look at yourself and you can't be who you really are, and every day you're living a lie on who you're pretending to be, you put a lot of stress on yourself by trying to internalize it and say, no, I'm cool, I got it. That's why our logo's the gas mask, is because we want you to remove that gas mask and show us who you really are and open up. But more than ever, that's why men are the highest statistic rating, is because we can cover it up very well. But the other great percentage
until it falls apart.
Yeah, that people, well, here it is right here. 33.5% of adults with a mental health issue also have a substance abuse issue. And that's because we try to mask it, right? I'll use this bottle of water to show how we view mental wellness. Is you're like, man, that doesn't weigh anything. I can manage it. 2 hours, man, it's starting to weigh on me. 6 hours later, I fatigue and I'm going to drop my arm. Is we wait too long. We don't take it on like we do. Interesting enough, when you go, man, I think I got a cold or something, you're immediately calling, trying to get help and antibiotics. But why don't we take on mental wellness like we do that? I call it my levels of DEFCON. Is maybe 1 and 2, I can manage myself. But man, 3 or 4, I probably need somebody to help me through this, right? And I think that's the deal that we do the most, is we try to avoid it, but it ends up weighing on us. And the thing that happens is, and everybody's been through this, is anxiety and depression can really control and take it over, where you don't eat, you don't sleep, you can't function. And when you wait too long, though, it's a harder road. It's almost like when you get a sinus infection and you wait till you have 105-degree temperature till you call the doctor. That's not getting fixed in 3 days, right? So the earlier we take on these issues, the quicker we take them on, the faster that you can process it through with a counselor.
Well, it's so you said counselor, and I've been thinking about this. But first, I think we covered why we're here today. We're going to talk about mental health, but we're going to talk about it from a raw standpoint. We have so many misconceptions about how we should do it, who should treat it, what you should do. I want to pull that back. And I want to talk about a personal story of mine I want you to share as well. But when we talk about opening up to that therapist, you have to be able to confide in them. Impossible. The idea that you'd meet a stranger and be like, let me just pour it out. When I think back to when I left the military, it was like a box check. You talk to the therapist.
Right.
But you don't want to tell her anything. Like, you don't want to tell her real things, because that goes back to your commander. That goes back to like, oh, he needs to be pulled aside because he's got real problems. It was like, well, yeah, I do got real problems, but I don't want to be pulled aside. I want to be treated differently or alienated in this whole thing. So I think so many of the standard approaches we're not ever going to delve into. If you tell me I need to go to a complete stranger, and for me, I left the military in 2014 and just, I don't need help. I'm going on. Like, I got to go find work. I got to do my life. This is the next chapter. Sadness, concerns, who cares? Have a drink. You have this, move on from it.
Right.
Like, there's no fucking way I'm going to sit here and go pour my heart out to someone that I don't know. And then for me, it took 2014, I left the military. This year is 2024. It took Wow, 9 years. 9 years leaving the service where I hit a point where I made a bad mistake. I overpromised and underdelivered on a program. And it was because I was trying to do everything myself and not acknowledging what was holding back my true productivity. And that is that there were things from my childhood. I first witnessed death at 8 years old. I witnessed again, like, this is family related thing. This isn't even outside world. So seeing my sister die, my brother die when I was 18, those are things that I'm like, well, that's that life. I am in the military now. And then the military adds new things. You go on deployments, you experience this, and you say those things don't matter because I went to war and I saw worse things. So this doesn't matter. You don't even think about those things. It took 9 years for me out where I just could not keep it up anymore. And I saw this quote, and it's a little funny. It's like, tacos fall apart, but we still love them. Well, I fucking fell apart. Like, I was not the same person. December of last year, I had a point where I could not keep going on the same path. And only through a colleague of mine, she recommended someone that she knew. Otherwise, I would no fucking clue who I'd find and tell this. But I trusted her. And I'm like, if she talked to this lady, then I trust this lady. So it was only in that one. I also had the flu. This is funny all about it. I had a terrible situation. I fucked up a program. I had a sinus infection that turned into a flu. That it was destroying me. I was down. And that's the day I talked to this therapist. So like, I'm coming off this messed up program, coming off, 4 years of running Startup World. And then I'm sitting there with like 105-degree fever, and I'm talking to this lady, and I'm sitting in the sauna outside of our headquarters, and I'm just at a weakened state. And I'm at the point where I am weak, and I'm just like, you know what? I got no fight in me. I'm telling you what's going on with my life. And I started from kids to like drugs I interacted with to the military. And she was like, duh, this is textbook. Like, you are a textbook case of why you're at. And she's like, I don't mean to simplify what you're going through, but I can help you. She's like, I can help you because unfortunately, this is very standard for men. And so like, when she said those things, I was like, really? She's like, no, I'm 100% confident I can help you. And so one of the things she told me right away was the traditional method of counseling, which is like, what happened to you? Tell me exactly what happened to you. She's like, it's terrible. That's a terrible way to approach therapy. Go relive the worst moment of your life with a complete stranger right now. Spin it up. And you're like, I can never do that. She's like, don't tell me about that. Tell me about the day. What was the weather like? Was the sun in the sky? Who was with you? Like, she's like, dance around it. Like, don't talk about this fucking thing. Talk about all these other things. What did you see? What did you think? Like, what did it take? Like, all these things. And I was like, why does this matter? Like, why does it matter for me to talk about this thing? This is the thing. Why am I talking about these? And I didn't understand at the time, but the process was, let's talk about this whole situation. Let's step back away from the most traumatic part of it and let's relive it, but let's relive all of it and not talk about the part that's most damaging. And I was like, I don't understand that at all. But through that process,
But it's very helpful, right?
It wildly helpful.
Well, first of all, the first thing you got to build is trust with anyone, counseling. And if you have a good counselor, that's the first thing they want to do is build trust with you. Mm-hmm. But as you were talking that you were able to find that person, the issue we have right now is we just don't have enough counselors out there.
Yeah, now everyone has a friend that went through this, something
Right.
similar. You can be like, oh yeah, talk to my friend.
Interesting that you said about that is what people, because people tell me all the time, man, why 22 vets die by suicide every day? Do they all have PTSD? Do they all have this? I said, where you're confusing is a lot of veterans brought issues into the military, just like you were talking about. A lot of them were escaping abusive relationships, right? Or maybe parents, issues with parents. A lot of it's financial, right? The parents couldn't support them anymore. They couldn't find a job. They needed a place to go, so they joined the military. And then a good portion of it is just stuff that you were going through and you were trying to escape it.
Have you read Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe?
I have not.
He says the same thing. He's like, so many veterans came in and they were in a bad spot. They joined the military to escape a life. And I know a lot of my soldiers when I was serving, they were foster kids. They saw the military as like, now I can be part of something.
Think about it. If you were raised where it was hard to find when you were getting your next meal, keeping your electricity on, you were walking to work every day, and you're thinking, I can go there, they're going to feed me, they're going to clothe me, and they're going to put a roof over my head, I'm in. It can't be as bad as it is now, right?
Yep.
So that's one of the things that you directly talked about. And I think that's the big misunderstanding about veterans is they always think whatever it was happened directly in the military. But we were taught, and it's taken a long time to get to the point of just suck it up and move on, right? I mean, our parents said that. I mean, a lot of our veterans, where their mental health issue started was maybe a father or a mother saying, stop crying about that. Just forget about it, move on, don't focus on it anymore. But they didn't really interact with them and help them find out what the issue is, right? And that's why the stigma is so powerful right now is we're afraid. I always use this weird terminology like we look at when we see a counselor like it's the mental health Carfax. That this car's had a dent before, it's ruined, I don't want to buy it, right? And we view our mental wellness, well, there's going to be some history about me seeing some, the funny thing is hearing people, well, what if I get a federal job or I work for the FBI or right? And they're like, this is going to keep me from having this wonderful job. And that's the problem. That's what we're viewing it. And that's when the interaction I've had with the police department
in 2014, other soldiers saying exactly what you just said. Dude, you cannot tell them that.
Why do you think police officers and firefighters,
FBI if you tell them
why do you think first responders don't want to ask for help? Because they feel they will not be promoted. If they get help, they will not be promoted. That's one thing that one tribe, it's totally confidential. It's off-site. They're not in uniform. We want to protect them 100% and make sure that they can open up and it won't let them feel this is going to affect my future. Mm-hmm. But what also, it's no different in the professional world, right? If you were a leader and you think, oh, I'm a vice president over X amount of people, man, I wonder what they would think about me if they found out I was having counseling, right? They would think lesser of me. That's the mistake we make and not think of it as powerful. I'll tell you a story that just shows you the power of leadership. We went out to the Joint Reserve Base up in Fort Worth the first time, and we had MAUs 30 and 31, the Marine brigades out there, about 400 Marines. And we just briefly talked about, taking care of yourself, mental wellness. Does anybody need help? Maybe 5 or 6 people, right? We're like, man, it just wasn't the impact we thought it was. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Rowland, who took over both of those, I started talking to him and he started telling me about his demons and the things he went through. I said, man, get up on that stage the next time, show that vulnerability. And it was the most amazing thing. Once the commanding officer showed that vulnerability and said he needed help, it was amazing. We had over 75% of them in the room asking for some sort of guidance, some sort of interaction of help with their mental wellness, right? Because it starts at the top. And that's the great thing I like about Beck, our CEO, Fred Papal. When we talked about starting this program, we have these, leadership podcasts that we put out to all the Beck offices. And man, he bared his soul, right? And told everybody the things he went through. And I think that's what people need to see in companies is instead of the check the box, right? Well, we have to have a mental health program. We do. We have it. It's right here, right? But you really don't, right? You just have something on paper. And I spoke at a forum, and I won't talk about the general contractors, but I was one of 4 speakers. And interesting enough, the last question was, what does your company invest in mental wellness? I said, we'll probably do well over $1 million this year. The other company said, just toolbox talks for field only. And the last person said, I'm supposed to develop a program with $0.
Just make it work.
Right. Just make it work.
So we can check the box.
And what we talked about earlier was right now, especially in the data center industry, to lose employees, good employees, it's almost irreplaceable, right? It's going to cost you a ton of money, 3 times the amount.
And downtime.
Right.
Yep.
To replace that person, retrain them. We need to invest the people we have, right? And in that, they have to realize is the scariest thing is, you talked about earlier, is where you fuck up. Am I going to be able to tell somebody and open up and say, I messed up, I need help? not only on a work related, but I'm now stressed out, right? And you think if somebody gets stressed out, what performance are you going to get out of them, right? They're stressed, they're not sleeping, they have anxiety. So if you don't find a way to support them, they're going to burn out. And the only two ways that they're going to burn out is just leave suddenly for no reason. Or the worst one, they take the company down or a project down, and when it's at its lowest moment, they bail. And then you're millions of dollars to turn around. So what I try to tell these companies, it's worth every bit of it. And here's the thing, it's like what we tell the officers, when I speak to all the different departments is, it's not if you're going to wait till then or you wait now, the cost is there. The only problem is, and when an incident happens, it's going to cost you a whole lot more than if you build resiliency now. So we have a PhD on staff for one tribe, and he puts statistics together. And one thing is, we asked a bunch of first responders, veterans. We went through this whole thing, see who had resiliency. Interesting enough, a certain percentage of people came back that they had resiliency that were first responders. Well, then we dug in more into those first responders, found out they were once military. And they had a traumatic experience happen, and they asked somebody to help them. They processed through the traumatic experience. So now that they're a first responder, they've built this resiliency on how to help themselves, right? So now they go into an issue they know that's going to happen, how to process it, how to know when to ask for help, and it makes them stronger. So what I'm trying to do is change the MO for first responders is, let's not wait till the incident happens. Let's start building resiliency now.
Yep.
And
Not be fucking reactive.
Right.
Yeah.
And the same thing about in construction companies. I'm teaching this program to all Beck employees. Matter of fact, our employee integration is all new employees have to go through this. Mm-hmm. And it's a 1-hour course. And what we're teaching them is how to take care of yourself mentally and the signs of the people around you that things. And we all know when you hear somebody, you got Joe that goes out to lunch with you every day. All of a sudden, Joe doesn't go to lunch anymore. Joe's sitting at his desk with his hands in his head. You know the signs, right? Mm-hmm. But what we do is, I don't know. I'm not trained. I don't know if I should talk to Joe. Well, do you care about him? Then yes, say something. You don't have to be a licensed professional or a counselor to tell somebody you care about them, and try to make sure that they find the resources they need. And, one thing I tell everybody that I speak about is, man, this country needs more love. I mean, we do not care about each other as much as we should. I mean, the people we work with every day, we see them 80% more than we see our families.
Yeah.
We should care about these people.
I don't know that so I think vast majority of people cannot extend their care beyond 150 people. Beyond the network that exists of 150 people. After that, it's like it's noise. I can't relate or understand you. And that's something that is inherent in all of us. If you came from the military, you might have the same fucking problem, which you don't give a shit about civilians who have problems. You're like, well, you didn't go to war. You didn't do this. Like, you have this thing where we have to be deliberate. And I don't think just telling people to go to counseling to be able to solve their problems is enough. For me, when I left the military, I was lost. I was confident as fuck. I was like, I'm a captain in the military, in the United States Army. I'm going to go find a job. I'm going to be successful. But I was lost. And I only found my tribe when I joined a rugby team. And it was by chance. Another veteran recommended, said, dude, come out with us. And I got there, and I'll be honest, I was a lot of shape. And I'm running, doing drills, and this guy's like, hey, look at Captain Underpants. And he's just busting my balls. I'm like, man, I haven't even busted my balls since I was in the military. It was like a refreshing feeling of like,
you got the camaraderie back.
Yeah. And so he's busting my balls about I was huffing and puffing, like trying to do sprints with these guys. And before you know it, it's like, well, fuck you. I'm going to be fast with you next week. And training and doing this and having that combative but friendly relationship, to me, that was it. Like, that was the path to like, all right, I'm confident again. I have my feet under me. And it's like, well, that's not counseling. That's a community thing. So part of me thinks that the only way we'll ever solve a larger mental health crisis is by changing the way we interact with each other and accepting that we're never going to know everybody. We're never going to be able to help everybody, but in pockets of 100 to 300 at a time, we can make real impacts.
Well, like we were saying, very interesting enough is, and I talked about the other charity that is one of our partners as well, MVP is.
MVP, what's that?
Merging veterans and players. So
merchants?
Merging
Merging
veterans and players is, you lose the locker room when you're in the military, you leave out. And when you're a pro athlete and you leave out, you lose the locker room. Both people miss that camaraderie of the team and that support. So we put these two together, right? One trying to get in shape, one looking for that camaraderie back. And it's amazing when you put these two people together that both needed that camaraderie back and they both support each other, right? I mean, you look at a team, you basically support your teammates. You're not going to win if they're not at their best. So you support them, you're around them. The locker room, is there something wrong with your kids, your family? They're very supportive, very similar to the military.
I didn't think about that. They are very similar.
And when you miss that camaraderie and you get it back, you find another way. And I mean, I have veterans that, and I talked to you about this before, you just need a new purpose, right? To fill those voids, to get you going, to take you through those dark times. Some of them it's working out, some of them it's hunting. It's interesting. Some people it's yoga. There's something that you find to try to re-get that energy back. And the other thing is the negative adrenaline. I mean, you go from a full adrenaline when you're military and a full adrenaline when you're an athlete, and all of a sudden you're not a veteran, you're not an athlete, right? So your body's looking for that adrenaline. And you end up doing stupid crap, right? That you shouldn't be doing, trying to find that adrenaline, trying to find that gap. And the other thing we do that we connect is try to find that thing that drives you, that creates that adrenaline again. And some of these veterans, it's interesting things. It could be music. Some of them connect with music. Some of them, like I said, I have a veteran who has a prosthetic leg. Down and out. And we started connecting. I took him hunting, and I mean, the light bulb went off. He just loved the whole process of it, the camaraderie with the team before the hunt, the waiting, the process, understanding what you're going to do, the cleaning the animal. It just changed his life. And today he's one of the veteran advocates that teaches other veterans to hunt, because he took that and became a force multiplier with it, right? And that's what we look for. And we need more of this. And I told you that right now, finding counseling is going to be hard. If we don't find other people to support us and guide us and help us through different processes in different ways, we're not going to, it's not going to be a successful outcome, right? And then I told you the other thing that I try to do is try to replace some of that negativity. And I talk about the seed, right? All the time is interesting enough is how our subconscious mind works, right? We have no idea, but you're sitting there and hypothetically, you're just sitting there in the afternoon. All of a sudden this thing goes, I think you're going to get fired. And you're like, man, why am I thinking that, right? All of a sudden it comes up again. When that seed, that negative seed gets planted, and man, then the trunk starts growing of anxiety. Man, why am I thinking I'm going to get fired? Then your boss, for some reason, walks by you and doesn't, hey, how's it going? And you're thinking, oh, he's going to fire me. That's why he just walked by. And then that trunk grows to leaves and becomes full depression. And then this thing that was just this negative seed that got planted, right, has created the issue. Full depression, you're not eating, you're not showing up to work, now you're going to get fired, right? Is stop that negative seed and plant a positive seed. Try to change it to something positive. Like what I did is when I thought of that negativity, I'm like, you know what? I wonder if my boss has 5 minutes to talk to me. And I go in there and guess what I found out? Man, he's been distance away. He has an issue, right? I'm stressed out. I moved into this new role. It's hard for me to process. Can we help each other? So that negative ended up turning into a positive where now we support each other, but we just can't wish things away. Our subconscious mind, this, it'll just come up the weirdest times. And it's so funny when you see somebody, I'll see veterans, and it'll be somebody's birthday party and they're having a good time. All of a sudden, this comes down. I'm like, what just happened? Man, I just thought of blah, blah, blah. I'm like, right now, this is what you're right? Because it's taking over you. And if you do not start that process of the journey, have good friends and support system. Because right now, like I said, to find counselors is probably going to be pretty hard for you. Now, one thing people don't realize, and we discussed this a little bit, is really dig into your insurance. In the construction industry, I'm telling you, most of the large companies have a great insurance program. And when you go on your phone, just say telehealth, the same way you go like, what, you know what, I'm not going in the doctor's office, and you see the doctor through the phone. If you change to the other side, the right side, it says mental wellness. And you can actually pick a counselor, pick a day. You can even pick male or female. There's different languages, but start some process where you talk to somebody. But right now, the telehealth is more available than in person. And also, if you have young teens right now, I mean, one of the deals that was in here was the teens 14 years old and up. Some of the high rates is the highest suicide rates we've ever had teens ever. Of course, COVID didn't help, right? Because we are an interactive being, right? We have to interact with each other. And to isolate a person just makes it 10 times worse. So when you look at where the ratings really spiked was through the COVID parts, right? But interesting enough, kids today, they interact and they talk to their friends over their phone more than they see them in person. So the interesting they found out about telehealth with kids is they interact better through telehealth because they can be in their rooms. They feel very secured. This is their bedroom. And now no one knows, and they can have this interaction with counseling and see the same counselor back. So if you have young children, especially teens, telehealth really works, but it's understanding the resources your company has. And then being honest and coming up early. I'm telling you, HR departments need to start become more robust. They offer, we do. I don't know if the other companies do. We have a personal day. It's not called a mental health day. We have you get several personal days. We do outpatient or inpatient support because what happens? You usually, when you go through a mental health issue, you're stressed out, you start abusing alcohol or other drugs, right? Well, let me tell you, that has to be headed up first, because I can't help the 6 inches between your ears if you have something else that has control of you. So the first thing to do is understand I've got an issue and I've got a problem, and you have to ask for help. That's the hardest thing.
Well, it's so interesting because like it's a symptom. Now it's become so overwhelming on yourself that it's like, I need to do something. When I think this is like something I've been trying to deconstruct in my own mind. When you have these challenges, our first thing is go seek mental health professional, go seek, counseling, go seek this. And for me, when I think about why I didn't have a problem when I left the military, like why I fell into the CrossFit, I fell into rugby, I fell into these communities, and it was great. I never had that episode. I may have had problems underlying, but it clearly didn't affect how I was doing work and communicating with people. What I found is pre-COVID, I left Seattle, where I moved at the time, and I had a huge network. Every single week, I was volunteering at a different group. I was part of something else. I moved to Texas, remote, and then 6 months later, COVID happened. But something about pulling myself away from everything created something I didn't even know I had. And so like when I think about what's the reaction to, I have something going on with myself, I should go to a counselor, part of me thinks, not yet. Not yet should you just immediately go and pour your heart out, because what I think, and like, again, tell me what you think. If you're not addressing some of the things that, for me, if I'm not getting out and sweating, if I'm not going on a run, if I'm not going on a walk, if I'm not pulling things out of my body, it doesn't give a fuck who I talk to. That is therapeutic. That releases and produces things in my body that make me feel better. And as soon as I pull away from fitness and I'm not regular with it, these intrusive thoughts like can come over. So I feel like before you should even address mental health and these other things, which are important, wildly important, what are you doing every day? Are you getting home and you're scrolling on your phone, or are you watching TV all day?
It's very typical because as a country, yes, we're jumping in early. I'll give you an example, like worst than any other time we're issuing antibiotics to everybody way early,
yes.
and they're
Yes.
not needed.
That's a really
And that's
good point.
because it's very similar as, "Oop, my nose is running. I think I need antibiotics." But you don't realize that the more antibiotics you're taking when not needed, your body's desensitizing to that antibiotic. And when you really need it, it's not going to work. Yes, sometimes, and I believe this, especially with our youth, is instead of trying to find a way, first of all, to build your own resiliency. Like, let me see what makes me feel better. Let me work out. Let me run.
Go for a walk.
Yeah,
Literally, just go for a walk.
My older son, he plays video games, kind of clears his head. It's what he does, right? But it needs to be to a point to where you go, this has control of me. That's when you need to make a decision, when whatever it is, that thing, that cross that you're bearing, those demons that are controlling you, when it's got control of you. In other words, you're thinking about it when you wake up and you're thinking about it when you go to bed. You're not sleeping, you're not eating right. You need to see somebody, right? Because it has control of you. But I know what I do, same thing you do, is I work out. And the other thing is retraining my thought process. And I'll give you an example.
I want to go back to that too.
I think what our issues are sometimes is we look at things that we struggle with very one-dimensionally. Like this, I'm thinking, man, I'm just a little behind on my bills. Just say, hypothetically, I need to work a little harder. I'm getting stressed out. Well, then there's somebody that's already lost their house. There's somebody that they're so far in debt, they can't keep their head above water. In other words, our one-dimensional is only us, but there's a lot of people who have it worse. This guy, one of these guys, Michael Carnell, who just died, Marine, of cancer, watch that guy fight. Man, anytime I try to think that I had it bad or life was rough, I was thinking about Michael I want one more week with my kids. That really changed my perspective. And at the end of the day is what makes me happy. And I'm like, you know what? I've got a great family, got a great wife that if we lost it all and we just moved back into a single apartment, we would still be happy because we have each other, right? Whatever this is, it's not as bad as I think it is. And sometimes what I teach people to do, I have my own, which was, I freaking love Whataburger. I'm just going to tell you right now. I eat probably Whataburger every morning for breakfast. I'm in line. It's a really deep line. And I'm like, geez, this sucks. The line's long.
Terrible. It's bullshit.
And there was a 7-Eleven right here, and there's a homeless guy asleep on a cardboard behind the 7-Eleven. And I'm like, the hell am I worried about, right? It's changing that perspective. And the other one is changing possessions to purposes. I see people all day long, they think what's going to make them happy is new possessions. And they don't realize your thing that you think, especially youth, is always, I got to have that new car, right? Well, my budget says $400. He goes in the car dealership, $750, you get what you want. You're like, man, that's going to make me so happy. I'm going to love that car. But you now just put yourself in debt. And every day is stressed out, right? That you created. And you keep thinking if you change, like, heck, I got two friends of mine are two millionaires, and he has a Lamborghini 3 weeks later. He has a Maserati. He's always thinking these things are going to make him happy. But you need to have a purpose. And I'm telling you what fires me, as you can see, is the purpose of helping veterans and first responders, right? That's my purpose. God gave me that purpose. And I'll never forget this. I'm second generation Sicilian. My grandmother and my grandfather came over here, and I was like 10 years old, and my grandmother said, "What do you think God wants from you?" As 10, I was like, "Thou shalt not kill." That no. What do you think he wants from you? I don't know. To make a difference in this world. To you physically, and I'm not talking about just monetarily. I'm telling you, you put your hands around something and you change it. You make it better. And it's that we always talk about that dash. I got my born in day, and there's going to be some day I'll leave. What am I going to do with that dash? what are people going to say when they talk about my dash? And I'd rather them say, man, he made this world a better place. Not, man, he sure did have a lot of shit. Right?
Yeah, nice fucking house.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you go to some of these people who own businesses and that's all they want is purpose. There's nobody at the funeral, right? Because they didn't make an impact and a difference in people's lives. And I'll never forget my dad. My dad's 80 years old, just bought a brand new Corvette Z06. He's having the time of his life, still working. And funny, for some reason, came up when he passed away. And I was like, well, what would you want people to remember you by? And he goes, one thing that the people out there said, he was a friend of mine. And the whole room, that's what they think. That was a friend of mine. He changed my life. He helped me. He goes, what better way to leave this earth?
That's fucking powerful. I'll tell you a quick story. My grandfather on my mother's side, Brett, he served in the Navy in the Pacific Theater, served in Okinawa, went through some pretty wild stuff as a medic out there. He passed away in 1986. I was 2 years old. So, I mean, I don't remember him. I know he used to walk me around and things. But there are people today in Mexico where when he left the Navy, he became a missionary. And he left northern Florida after getting back from the war and became a missionary in Mexico. That's where he adopted my mom at. And in that area, they know him. Like Brett was a good man. Annie, my grandmother, was a good, like these are people that impacted them. Did they have jobs? No. Did they make tons of money? Fuck no. They had humble life. Their family were a little wealthier and that was able to afford for them to buy vehicles and have a larger impact in society over there in Mexico. But they had no corporate positions. They had none of these things. But today, people in that community would be like, what a great man he was. He died in 1986. Like what has happened in that environment from 86 to now? This is 2024 and they still know this man. They still speak so highly of him.
You got to look at the imprint that person made. And just like you name 3 teachers in your whole entire life, probably those are teachers that made such an impact in your life, right? Mm-hmm. And that's because they did more than just cash a check. They cared about you.
Deeply. Like,
and
this wasn't an option. This is like the part of their personality is to care.
And they
wanted to make an impact.
They wanted to change your life and give you a purpose and an understanding.
You want nothing in return.
And nothing. And, you know, I just remember some of the things that I guess my teachers that I'll never forget was just the process of knowing that I wasn't on an island by myself, right? And that you could go, I need help, right? I need some support. And that's all we should do with each other, right? That's the most important thing. I mean, my kids all know I'll support them. I love them. But one of my sons needed help. I knew it wasn't going to be me. They weren't going to listen to me. And one of the passive employees for One Tribe started his own counseling business. And I got them two connected. And boy, it was an amazing thing to watch, right? He kept coming back and saying, man, he's got me on this workout program. He's got me eating right. I'm like, you know, of course, it's the same stuff I was telling him. But it couldn't come from me, right? Because mine was something he has witnessed of me always telling him what to do as a parent. He needed that neutral person. But when you talk about confidence, the interesting thing was, I think the second or third counseling thing, he goes, well, what did Blake tell you? It's like, Blake can't tell me anything. It's confidential. I don't know. Did you even go? But once he realized I didn't know, that's when it took off. And that's what we need, is to make sure that whoever we interact with or someone that we trust has to be someone we trust, is very supportive. And believe me, the biggest thing, I can't tell you how many officers that I'm their battle buddy. I mean, I got a few Mansfield officers, a few Fort Worth police officers. One that the most powerful and the thing that had ever been said to me was he's a motor cop, old school guy. I could tell he was on the path of destruction, and I kept on him and I kept on him. Just let me help you. Just come see us. And it ended up just me wearing him out every day, calling him, dude, I'm concerned. I love you. Please see somebody. Please. So finally this guy does, and he sees someone. This is 2 years later. And he came over to my house, he and his new fiance, and they're in the swimming pool. We're hanging out. And at the end of the night, he turned to me and he said, you know, you saved my life. The very last call you made, I had my gun in my mouth. And it was like the most powerful thing is reaching out. That was the most powerful thing. Saying you care about somebody is you don't know where they're at on that path.
But you just cared enough to call in the first
They just
place.
keep calling.
So that to me represents so much about what's missing when we direct people towards mental health, like therapy, medication, or whatever. It's like, yes, these are areas that treat symptoms, but what's going to make a fucking lasting impact is this unrelated thing. If you're not talking about your problems, you're helping, you're giving back, you're being part of society, you're making an impact. And to me, I recommend, like, if you're leaving the service, don't stop serving. You left the military fucking Tuesday, you should be volunteering on Wednesday. In what capacity? It doesn't fucking matter. Whether you're at a homeless shelter, you're just handing out food, you're building, you're cleaning up trash, being part of a group that's giving back and doing things. To me,
That's what
is
I'm
the
saying
fucking
is
secret.
finding that new purpose is so important.
Yeah, fucking
because
purpose.
you get out, and we've seen it, is you get out, the first thing you go is, I'm not shaving. Right? First thing you say, I'm not shaving. I'm getting a beard. I'm letting my hair grow. It's going to touch my damn collar. That's the first thing. Well, then it's, I'm not going to work out anymore. They made me work out, but you don't realize
early. Yeah.
realize the self-destruction is somebody was guiding you and making you stay in your lane. And the minute you get out, you jump in this lane. It's so hard to come back down from that. When you go into the ditch, and, you know, I have so many people, they've let themselves get out of control. Then they go to the VA, and the VA's prescribed way too many medications for them. Now they're desensitized. They can't interact. They don't know how to be a father. They don't know how to be a parent. That's the other thing is, you think how many times people are deployed or out, they've never officially been a parent. They've been a temporary parent, and mom's been the parent. Mom's been the financial advisor. And then you get out, you're like, I'm taking control of all this. And if you don't think all chaos is going to break out, right? But we have to do more processing, more support that is outside of the military that we're forced to be a part of.
Different prescription.
Yeah. Of, we're going to take you through these. This is free to you. This is not a military person, and help guide them on their way out. But we all know we spend more money to create the warrior than we do turning the warrior back to a civilian. Mm-hmm. And that's the hardest thing for us is, damn it, I'm a warrior. You're going to change to accept who I am when that's not what's going to work. You know, I can't tell you, like one of the mentors that I have, this guy was Army guy out. He couldn't see his kids anymore because he wasn't paying child support. And 15 minutes, I knew what was wrong because I said, the last 4 jobs, what happened? Well, he asked me to do this. I said, fuck you. I'll do it the way I want to do it. Wait, you said what to him? Yeah, they fired me after that.
Can you believe it?
And all 3 times were these aggressive behaviors back, but he thought like us, right? We might argue, we might fight. The next day we hug it out, it goes away. Because we have to deal with each other and move on, right? But in civilian life, that's not how it works. You're fired. You can't come back. You just told your boss to go F himself, right? So we started working on, what is your new goal? Your goal is to see your kids. And then that's when he was like, I've never been a dad before. Okay, let's work on that. So what I did was interact with a church that has a veterans program. And the veterans program's not read the verses, here's the Bible. It's this, the most important thing is interacting with people who are servants in the sense of going bowling. When he took bowling to his kids, he saw how the other fathers interacted with their children, not expecting a 2-year-old to get a strike every time. You know, I mean, hypothetically. But it was learning to be a servant again by being guided by other people. And once he started understanding that process, now the new priority became, I need to keep a job because I want to see my kids, right? And that was his adrenaline. That was his thing. And now, years later, I'm still in contact with the guy. Great relationship with his kids. But it takes investing in other people and caring. And to me, I'm willing to do that. And I don't give up on people hard. The other thing I do, one of the things with the tribe is, you hang out with me, we're going to hug. right? That's the very first thing that we're going to do, because it's interesting is the first guy I give a hug, it's the stepbrothers. You know, you're doing this, trying to push back, and you see the guard go down. And then finally, interesting enough, the 10th or 12th time, it's wanted. It's a desire, right? Because we need that interaction. We love that support of knowing what's wrong with two guys just hugging it out and being buds and loving each other. The other thing I do is I tell all of them, love you, bro, right? I'm serious. I love you, bro. Mm-hmm. And then the most important thing, and this is the thing society keeps, is like when somebody goes, man, my wife and I are having a hard time. You make the mistake. Well, man, if you need anything, let me know. But you're not sincere. You're gone. Yeah. You're out.
It's like,
you Pontius Pilated that thing and you're like, I'm out, right?
I did my duty.
Well, what kind of friendship is that, right? And, I had another officer, same thing, going through a divorce, trying to do his job, trying to get time with his kids. It's hey, sometimes you just got to talk about some of that stuff and open it up. I did. I was like, I went through a divorce. These are some of the things that I went through. But interesting enough, once again, the perspective was when I was at my lowest low, I remember I was sitting in bed looking up and I go, never forget this day, because this day is the low, but every day from now, I'm going to make it better. And now you look back on that and you laugh. You go, wow, just can't believe how I felt then. But if we don't have lows, the lowest of the low, you can't really applaud and enjoy the highest of highs, right? And that's where we have to be strong, is when we're in the valley and realize I've been in the valley several times, but I'll fight my way out of it. And then I can't wait till I look back on it and go, God dang, I thought, when things couldn't got better, and look at me, it's got better, because it was that perspective and that drive to knowing I'm healthy. I'm smart. I don't have any disabilities. Like there's nothing holding you back, right? Other than this.
Something you're saying there makes me think it's almost like you have to explain a roadmap to everybody. And that when you're going through things, it's normal. Like this is, as you said, 70, 80% of it. This is a common thing for us all to have these issues. Right. Military, first responders, civilian, it's common for us to deal with this. So the idea that you have almost like a checkbox in your head of hey, I'm going through something. Have I been working out? Have I been going for a walk? Have I been sleeping? Have I been doing this? Literally, truthfully ask yourself, have you been sleeping properly? Because for me, there's nights that I'd sit there and my mind will not shut off. And I've learned, take melatonin. I don't take it every night, but if I'm sitting in bed and I'm having one of those nights where I can't turn my head off, walk back out my bedroom, grab some melatonin, eat my melatonin, and before I know it, I'm
sleeping. Not only this, is think about the process you're going through. And you'd be surprised, okay, I need to go to bed, but what are you doing at 9 o'clock at night? You're looking at your phone. And that screen is re-adrenalizing your brain to start focusing on stuff. So some of it is that habit of constant engagement with things that re-engages you to not sleep, right? Mm-hmm. And the other things is, I'll give you an example, is research medication that you're taking. Research it. I'll give you an example, the sinus infection. I got a really bad sinus infection. Then I made the mistake. I flew to Atlanta for a meeting. So all that opened up, it got worse. Well, all of a sudden I went through a real severe anxiety deal. I was like, what is up with this anxiety? Well, people don't know, if you take prednisone magnifies anxiety by 10 times. If you look up what prednisone, some of the effects of that, especially if you're taking a heavy Z-Pack or the scheduled Z-Pack, or they kept me on 60 milligrams of prednisone, which was the highest level. And I'm telling you what, it was hard to function. The minute I said, you know what, be sick or go through this horrible anxiety, when I basically stepped down and moved out of the prednisone, it all went away. Sometimes it's researching the effects some of the medication that we're doing does. The other thing is, why do you think you're going to go to bed and you're drinking Dr. Peppers, right? You're taking caffeine. So there's certain things that if you analyze it and you check it out, or find something that really destimulates you. I know me, if I throw up a book and I start reading a book, I can pretty much start bringing it down, right?
You're right. No.
Right? Slowly find those things, but try to stay away from the things. Sometimes it's what programs you watch, right? If you're watching something like a thriller or something like that, your adrenaline is processing through what's happening and you're getting your heart rate up, right? It's trying to be
That's a real
sensible.
fucking thing. I love crime fiction and things like that. And I find that in the military that if I sat that night reading those books about terrible things, which I find fascinating, it fucking led me into dreams that were crazy. So like what I started to deconstruct as I came out of my fog of these things, and that there's real ways to evaluate what you're doing in your life right now. And I want to reiterate this because I want to move on to your origin story, but are you sleeping? That's a real fucking thing. Like, did you go to bed at 1 a.m. last night? Or did you go to bed at 10 p.m.? If you're always saying closer to 1, let's evaluate. Like, this is a real thing that's contributing to your sleepiness, your aggressiveness, your anxiety throughout the day that might not even be related to your PTSD. Maybe PTSD brought on the reason you're not sleeping. But first, look at, are you sleeping?
Right.
Are you eating? What are you eating throughout the day? Are you exercising? Are you exercising? Are you learning? Are you just doing your work, coming home, watching TV, dealing with your kids and going to sleep? Or are you spending 20 minutes trying to learn something? Like, if you're not doing these things throughout your day, don't go to a mental health therapist. That's my view. Don't go, I need to go to a mental health therapist before you evaluate what you're doing with your life.
Analyze yourself. Yeah. Analyze what the issues are and what your effects are. I mean, if you're not sleeping and you're not sleeping, here's the one I love is you're playing video games to 2 a.m. in the morning. And then you have to get up at 6 and you're like, man, it's hard for me to function. It's pretty easy what's going on, right? But there's a lot of people who can't figure that out. And interesting enough, they're like, well, I play video games because I can't go to sleep.
Or you leave the TV on because you need the TV on to go to sleep.
Yeah, you're stimulating
you wonder
yourself.
why you can't sleep?
Yeah, you're stimulating yourself. And it's just a process. What I always do is I write down a lot of my processes.
That's a really good point, by the way.
Yeah, is I write down my processes, or even that, some of the negative things or something bad that's happened. And I literally, and it's easy when you see this is the negative and what positive things are going on in your life. When this, you go, wow, like, what am I worried about these 3 things when all these amazing things? Or you start, maybe what I found out was, man, I'm sore, I'm blah, blah, blah. I found out I'm doing too many reps. And that's was affecting basically my day, right? Was some reasons why I didn't sleep because the nerves were being pinched. Was start researching some of the things that are going on and try to isolate some of those issues. But this has been great, man.
We'll keep talking about that.